Hi, today I'm going to talk about one of the most important concepts of the Scrum Framework, also known as the product backlog, because the product backlog is the backbone essential of the entire Scrum Framework. So it is significantly important to understand the base level idea of the product backlog, because once you'll get the base level understanding of the product backlog, it'll help you in building the foundation of the whole Scrum framework, and you'll better understand the whole idea of the Scrum framework. So in this video, I'm going to discuss the fundamental details around the product backlog and what are the associated properties that are associated with that product backlog is. So without any delay, let's just get started. Product backlog is fundamentally the source of all your project requirements, which means that this is kind of a repository or a storage point where the product owner is actually taking inputs from different business executives, stakeholders, either they are external stakeholders, internal stakeholders, vendors, procurers, end users, your team. So from all these stakeholders, the product owner is actually taking inputs. So these inputs are actually the requirements of your project. So all the requirements are being gathered by the product owner, and then the product owner is actually gathering all this information in some sort of a registered or storage repository, and this repository is referred to as the product backlog, because the product backlog is actually the source of all your project requirements. And most importantly, this product backlog is transparent to everybody who's actually related to this project, which means that the visibility of product backlog would be available to everybody who would be the part of this project. Either he's a stakeholder, he's a scrum master, he's the development team, or the external stakeholders, vendors, customers. Everybody will have the visibility of the product backlog. And the second property of the product backlog says that the product owner sorts and prioritizes the product backlog item, which means that once the product owner has actually registered all the requirements of the project in the product backlog, this is the time when the product owner will first sorts the product backlog, which means that against each requirement, the product owner will actually give a unique identification, so that each requirement will then be identified against this number, and this will be sorted based upon either descending or descending order. And then the product owner will prioritize the product backlog item. So prioritization is very important in the Scrum framework, because prioritization means that which items the product team, the development team, is actually going and picking in their first sprint. So based on that prioritization, the Scrum team, which is the development team, will actually pick and choose to build those items. So most importantly, this prioritization is based upon the business value the requirement is carrying. So the items in the product backlog which are having the highest value would be prioritized and would be up in the product backlog. And this prioritization is done on another metric, which is risk. So the riskiest items will again be on to the top of this product backlog, because risk can mushroom. So it might be a possibility that at this point in time, there's not a lot of risk, but if you do not take consideration into account, then later this can mushroom and it can actually expand. So that's the reason the product owner actually picks and chooses which item he is prioritizing based on the business value and the risk that is associated with those requirements. And then once the product backlog has been prioritized, it is necessary that before you actually going into a sprint, the backlog is always prioritized. And this is a mandatory part of the Scrum framework. And then the Scrum teams always estimates and define their capacity to attack the items in the current product backlog, which means that the team and the product owner will sit together and try and find out that as to how much time they'll actually take to develop each requirement. And this is known as estimation. So let me just repeat the sequence of activities that are happening in the product backlog in a chronological order. First, the product owner has actually gathered all the requirements and he registered all the requirements in the product backlog. Then the product owner sit with his team and all the stakeholders as well and try and prioritize the product backlog and sorts it. Once the product backlog is prioritized, then the team is actually going to estimate their capacity to attack the items they are going to pick in their first sprint. So once this is done, then the development team always choose to work on the most important items, which is the fundamental premise of the Scrum framework, that the development team will always choose the items that are high in risk and most important that is carrying the most value to the project. So these items will be developed first by the team. And an important concept I would like to highlight here, that in Scrum the teams are self-organizing. They do not pick and choose any items by having a directive from the above, but they are working at their own end. The product owners, Scrum Master are giving them the autonomy to pick and choose their own work. So they are organizing their own work and they know that which items have the business value and high risk, because this has already been defined in the product backlog. So they pick and choose only those items which are having the topmost priority. And lastly, the backlog refinement, which means that once the product owner and the team has gone into the sprint and they have actually completed all the deliverables they were actually supposed to build in that sprint, they have created it, then they'll return back and they'll try to update the product backlog, because the backlog is basically refining the backlog is something which is an ongoing activity, because in Agile and it's under its umbrella, the Scrum framework, the requirements is keeps on changing because you're working in a changing environment situation. So backlog refinement would be ongoing activity. So once the sprint will be over, the product owner and the team will sit together and try to evaluate which items in the product backlog now has the highest priority based on the business value and the risks that are associated with those requirements. With this, we are now reached to the end of this video, and I'm really hopeful that this video has given you fundamental understanding around the product backlog. So feel free and let me know what do you think about the product backlog, and most importantly, subscribe my channel and hit the bell icon so that you can get the timely notifications about my video, and that is a must thing. So till the next video, bye bye.